And to go deep into the relevance of this multilateral event, we invite US-based journalist and activist Yhamir Chabur, member of the Troika Collective. Hi, Yhamir. Welcome to From the South.
Hi, Andrea, right?
Andra, thank you.
Yes, Andrea. Thank you for having me on the South in
Let,
teleSUR.
you're welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So let's start with what to expect from the BRICS Summit in the face of the uncertain international scenario marked by war, conflicts, and politically motivated unilateral measures imposed by powerful nations to developing countries.
Well, so I think right now what's occurring in Russia is a gathering of many of these countries in the global South. As we know, BRICS is something that has been around for about almost 2 decades. I mean, started in 2006 with a union of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then also South Africa. This is where you get the acronym BRICS. That basically it's a South by South cooperation economic bloc in order to fight the hegemon of the US dollar, which is mostly the trade worldwide. So this is a way for countries that have big economies, like such as Brazil or such as Russia or China, in order to come together and figure out ways to diversify the world economy in order for their economies not to rely on the US dollars. And this type of proposal has attracted many other different countries in the world economy, whether it's countries in Latin America like Bolivia or Venezuela, which are more left-leaning and anti-imperialist countries, or those that are not so towards the left. I believe you have countries like Saudi Arabia that want to also be part of the BRICS, and many other different African states as well. So this right now is very interesting at a time where we're seeing how we see capitalism in crisis, how we're seeing the dollar being plunged right now. And due to this, we see wars happening, manifesting, whether we see it in the Ukraine or in the Middle East, what's happening right now with the genocide being imposed by the state of Israel with the help of the United States. So we're seeing this kind of being a way of trying to respond to all of these economic crises that we're seeing worldwide.
Yhamir, how could this summit mark a before and an after in economic redefinition?
I think this right here, this summit could bring about multipolarity. It could bring about an alternative to the US dollar. Basically trying to figure out ways of how global South countries could create a different form of trade, which is outside of the dollar, in order to bring about the multipolar world, in order for like other countries, whether they have projects for their countries or even in their regions, whether we could say like in Iran or in China or the Middle East, or as well as Latin America, have their own be able to have the space, the economic space, in order to have the social and political space to create development for their countries and their regions.
Latin America, this summit is especially remarkable. Just a couple of days after the closure of this summit, from New York, where you are at this moment, the National Assembly will vote on the resolution presented by Cuba against the U.S. blockade. Can the BRICS support Cuba's claim?
For sure. I believe that right now what we're seeing with the BRICS, and especially when we're seeing with this BRICS summit in Russia, and seeing that these Latin American states, Bolivia, Venezuela, having Nicolas Maduro there being one of the first Venezuelan presidents to ever attend a BRICS summit, and also Cuba, demonstrating how like this is also very important for Latin America in the sense of how Latin America is right next to the United States. It's south of the United States, and because of like the whole so close. I think there's a saying in Mexico, like there's so far from God and so close from the United States. And I say this type of phrase is because a lot of countries in Latin America rely on the US dollar, most of the economies. And this is why the United States could utilize its influence in many countries due to neoliberal policies that have the business and the commerce in every country rely on the US dollar. And this is also another reason why the United States can utilize its economic system and can weaponize it against countries they're in disagreements with, whether that's sanctions on Venezuela, sanctions on Nicaragua, or the long-standing 60-year blockade on Cuba, the genocidal blockade on Cuba that they have tried to suffocate Cuba for so long because Cuba decided to have its own path in 1959 with its glorious revolution. But because of that, Cuba has been punished, and the United States utilizes its economic system and the BRICS could give help to Cuba, could demonstrate like states like countries like Cuba and like Venezuela and now like Nicaragua that are affected by economic blockades. It could help them create alternatives in order for them to rely on a new economic system in order for their projects, whether that's the Cuban Revolution or the Bolivarian Revolution or the Sandinista Revolution, to flourish within the region. And also within the respective countries. And now, as we see, next week is the annual UN general vote on the Cuban blockade, and we always see every year, as we saw last year, how there was many countries that are in support of Cuba's like right and self-determination and are against the blockade. And these are countries also that are not always like socialists or leftists, but they support that Cuba should not have this blockade, while you always have the same two countries, the United States and the State of Israel, that vote in favor for the blockade. And then last year also you had one country that abstained, which was Ukraine. Of course, it's an ally of the United States and Israel in this whole global chess piece. But with this BRICS Summit, I think that this also, like when we have this thing coming up on the UN vote, this also helps Cuba's case and helps Cuba garner more support for next week with other states from the global South in order to support the efforts of the Cuban people to finally end and get rid of this 60-year-old genocidal blockade.
Thank you, Yhamir. Thank you for your time hearing from the South.
Thank you for having me.
We were listening to US-based journalist and activist Yhamir Chabur, member of the Troika Collective, in the context of the 16th BRICS Summit held in the Russian city of Kazan.